How's everybody doing? Hey, if you get a chance, check out some of my other videos. Had a few that have done alright, others that seem to miss the zeitgeist or the algorithm, whatever it may be. Yeah, check a few of them out. We're just gonna have a fun one today. Nothing crazy.
Hello? What happened? Where am I? Am I alive yet?
Well, we are alive now. Alright, so as the title says, I'm just gonna, and maybe I'll get some heat on this. I don't know, because everybody has their own opinions on these things. But I'm doing my top 10 animated cartoon series of the 90s. I was born in the 80s. I could have gone with some of the stuff from the 80s, but that would have been like later 80s stuff. I was more, there were things there that I enjoyed. I could do that some other time. But I decided to specifically sit on the 90s. As you can see, there's a few on the background there, giving away a little bit, but not too much. I excluded The Simpsons, whatever nighttime. I guess I honestly like Simpsons is supposed to be an adult cartoon, but it was, it's listed as an adult cartoon. And everybody knows that from the 90s, The Simpsons was probably the top animated series for that time period, even though it's been a dead series for the last 20 years. But we're going to go with the ones that I enjoyed watching either on Saturdays, Sundays, when Nickelodeon really was doing their Sunday morning stuff, and even in the afternoon. I think like animation has kind of died. Now, I know the Cartoon Network is still out there, I believe. I don't know if it's still on TV or not. All I know is like the local cable company here, we're going to charge you extra to have the Cartoon Network. And I was like, it's not even worth it. The only reason I watched it now was for Rick and Morty, but never really paid attention to too much on it. So I remember when Cartoon Network first came out, it basically had cartoons from, the 50s, 60s, and 70s on it. It was just showing all that old stuff. And it wasn't until the 90s when it really started producing their own shows. So you have those cartoons from Cartoon Network. Nickelodeon and Fox were huge during the 90s. If you were not a kid in the 90s, you wouldn't understand how big Nickelodeon and Fox was, especially Saturday morning Fox and then Sunday morning um, Nickelodeon. I mean, think about that. As kids in the 90s, Friday nights you had TGIF. Saturday mornings you had Fox cartoons. And maybe some people were still watching, ABC, CBS, and whatever. But for me and my family, it was Fox. And then Sunday mornings, you'd wake up if you weren't at church, and it was Nickelodeon. It was the block of Nickelodeon cartoons. I mean, what a fantastic time to be a kid. And probably the last time that, sorry, I'm having to turn my notifications off on my phone. Probably the last time that I think kids really had like that Saturday morning where you just sat around for 2 or 3 hours just doing nothing except watching cartoons. I don't have kids that I'm aware of, so I don't know what they do on Saturday mornings anymore. Video games, I guess, or YouTube, whatever it may be. But yeah, what a time to miss out on. So I again, these are my top 10. These are not what others have talked about or what others or reading different rankings. These are what I'm going with as far as what I enjoyed. So I'll start with number 10. And number 10 for me was this one here, was Animaniacs. This cartoon, I remember, I think it was in 93 when it came out. And I don't know, again, this could just be my memory, but for me, it was on every afternoon. And I'm probably wrong with this, but it seemed like it was on every afternoon, like after school. And you remember the first time watching it. You remember all the different characters, the spin-off series that they have, Pinky and the Brain. You had the two squirrels, the grandmother and the son. You had the baby that was being babysat by the dog. You had the three like Goodfellas that were pigeons. I know I'm forgetting a few others. You had the scientist and hello nurse. You had the security at Warner Brothers. Um, they would even would poke fun at celebrities. Yeah, so Steven Spielberg in the early '90s really got into animation and wanted to have like their own kind of animation at Warner Brothers. So he had a few that came out that he presented, but I mean he really didn't have that much to do with them. They just put his name on it. But one of them was Animaniacs, and this Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, I mean, took over in the mid '90s. I think it was only around for 4, maybe 5 years. Then it was canceled, and of course was brought back on Netflix. But I have the complete series on DVD that I'll pop in from time to time. I mean, from them singing about the states, singing about the countries, having like adult jokes in there that at the time even I was like, was that what I thought that was? And then we watch them back now and seeing how they go and how they are. So yeah, at number 10 I got Animaniacs. At number 9 I have the second. Let me see. I know I saved it on here somewhere. The second Steven Spielberg, and that is Tiny Toon Adventures. So this was Warner Brothers' way of basically kind of rehyping up the and introducing the new generation of the Bugs Bunny characters because the Bugs Bunny, the Daffys, and all those had kind of played out. And I know people sit there and go, "Oh my God, how can you say that they were played?" There was a time period there where kids of like my age, and maybe a little bit older than me, just I mean the Bugs Bunnies and Daffy Ducks and stuff just weren't drawing the ratings. They might be fun to watch from time to time, but you weren't sitting there every Saturday morning watching that. So they came out with Tiny Toons. And again, by the time I was watching this, I think it was on every afternoon, even though like in syndication or something. But you had Babs and Buster Bunny, Maximilian. You had the pig. Can't remember the pig's name. You had the little duck. I mean, basically, all these characters were supposed to be like either relatives or understudies to the previous generation of Warner Brother cartoons. The Bugs Bunnies, the Daffy Ducks, the Porky Pigs, Sylvester Cat, the Tasmanian Devil, the Roadrunner Coyotes. And it was just even the Tweeties you saw there. It was just a fun little knockoff. They were like on their own little island too, which is well. I remember the video game, even playing the video game on Nintendo and maybe Super Nintendo, but I think it was on Nintendo. So yeah, that's my number 9. My number 8. So again, I was talking about earlier how Nickelodeon really got into cartoons, and it started in '91 when they introduced Rugrats, Doug, might have been another one, and Ren and Stimpy. And I remember the night that they like put it on like a Thursday night or a Friday night to kind of get people interested in it before they moved them to Sunday. This one wasn't part of the original one. This one came out later, but this is my number 8. It says Real Monsters, and I gotta write this down that I'm on. Oh wait, no, I skipped one. Well, you know what? No, we're gonna do number 8 was Real Monsters. Um, Again, just this was a quirky cartoon about monsters, being real. I remember they premiered this like October of '95 or '94, somewhere around there. And it was like getting hyped up for Halloween. And this came on, and this was a just a fantastic little show. Tim Curry did the voice of like the teacher in this show. But if you haven't seen that, give this a chance. Check it out. It's fantastic. And number 7. Now this one it only ran for a year. I mean, think about that. And this was on Disney Channel. and it ran for a year, and it was, I mean, super popular. But only had a year. Just think about that. A year, maybe two. Well, I could be thinking about it. Maybe it was 2 years. But we're gonna go with Darkwing Duck at number seven. Batman ripoff. I mean, let's be honest, it's just Batman ripoff. But it's a funny little cartoon where I mean, they make fun of the lead character. I mean, he's a bit of a doof. The villains that he faces are just fantastic. But yeah, Darkwing Duck, if you haven't seen it, plus it has probably one of the greatest theme songs of any cartoon. That's number seven. Number six, go back to one of the original Nicktoons, and I did not like the Disney version of this. It's not bad, but the Nickelodeon version is just 10 times better. Disney, I think, got it in 95, so it was on Nickelodeon for about 4 years, and then went over to Disney because it's just Nickelodeon. I just felt that they were going in a different direction, and so it went to Disney, and just the Disney version is they redid I mean, they changed everything. Like the city was completely different. I know they ended up like they took him from middle school to high school, but Doug, man, that was like I think I was 10 years old when this cartoon first came out. So like for the first 4 years, like that was me in middle school. Doug funny. Um, Get Skeeter in there, of course, the blue guy, which I think most people claim that he's supposed to be actually like like a black dude. Pork Chop, Patty Mayonnaise, Roger, a few other characters, Mr. Dink, Mr. Dink. Just a great show. It came out at a good time. The beats, wow, you killer tofu. Um, yeah, I enjoyed Doug too much. And I think most of the kids, most people that are my age now, Rugrats and Doug were the original cartoons that stuck with them. Because again, those were the first two original. We'll say Nicktoons, Nickelodeon Nicktoons. And they might have had previous other cartoons, but this was the start of their Sunday morning lineup. Coming in at number five, and a lot of people either liked this or hated it and didn't understand it, but I enjoyed it, and that is The Tick. Again, another cartoon that came out in the mid 90's, and it was just basically making fun of the superhero trend of cartoons at the time. And it's about this city who there's just good guys and heroes and villains everywhere. They're just everywhere. And for whatever reason, this city just goes on like nothing's going on. That's what I loved about it. Like the city just was like, oh, whatever. But you have all these just individuals trying to be superheroes fighting villains, and it's just the craziest superheroes that you could find. Like a guy dressed like a moth, like a fish guy. You had villains. You had like one guy whose chair face his head is just a chair. Just the weirdest stuff, but the greatest stuff too. And the best part was, I think like one of the first episodes, like one of them, some villain engraves something in the moon, or maybe Tick does. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it. And just thinking about how much they every time they showed, because after that they showed the moon every time with the whatever was carved into it. Think about how much more that cost for them to keep that gag going of the moon with this weird engraving on it. But the Tick, it's another one. If you haven't seen it, you get a chance to find it somewhere. I know the DVDs are out there somewhere, and give that a watch. Now my number four, and some people will probably say that this is too low, but I'm gonna go with this one. It's the X-Men, the Fox animated series. Now they recently brought X-Men '97 on Disney Plus. That was good. That was really good. It was in line with this particular one. Animation was better. Storylines were better. But man, you want to talk about Saturday mornings from I think '92 when this one came out. When this one hit the theme song, first off, you were just in it from that point on. You just buckled up and went with it. The animation was wonky. I mean, it's you can find it on Disney Plus now, and the animation was wonky. There's no lies about that. There were times it was just extremely wonky. But this was probably one of the better Marvel animated series that has ever been out. And I say one of them because there's going to be another one that's in the top five here that I don't want to give away. But yeah, the '90s X-Men was fantastic, and they dealt with a lot. Like they talked about a lot of stuff in there that you probably normally wouldn't see in kids shows. But yeah, it's a good one to check out. Okay, my number three, and I know this one is gonna I'm gonna get heat for this one, but I don't care because I love this show. Is Rocco's Modern Life, the lovable wallaby from down under who moves to America. Between him, Heifer, Filbert, the frog neighbors next door, Mr. and Mrs. Bighead, to the comic book store with the guy with the hair plugs, the girlfriend with the hook. Dude, in this show, you want to talk about adult themes. I mean, you had nudity in this, or suggested in this cartoon. You had Rocco working at a sex phone as a sex phone operator, and Mrs. Bighead calling him. You had some of the weirdest kind of adult in it. Like it didn't reach that Ren and Stimpy level. Like Ren and Stimpy was just gross. Like I remember just being physically just nauseous. Oh, I'm nauseous. Oh, I'm nauseous at Ren and Stimpy. But Rocco's Modern Life like was borderline there at times. But such a great show. I actually won a T-shirt. Nickelodeon had a contest where they wanted you to draw one of their Nicktoons. I ended up drawing Tommy from Rugrats, like holding a screwdriver as if he had busted out of his crib. And I don't know what place I got. I can't remember what the grand prize was, but I don't know what place it was. But I got this thing in the mail. It was a big package in the mail, and it was soft, and it was a black Rocco's Modern Life T-shirt, and I thought that was the greatest thing ever. And that ended up somewhere being thrown away. I wish it didn't, but I remember it was like two sizes too big for me. I remember wearing it to school. Like the next day I got it because I was just so proud of it. But yeah, Rocco is my number three. So coming in at number two, I talked about another Marvel cartoon from the '90s that was better than the X-Men. Now I'm sure some people will go back and forth on it, which I'm fine. But for me, the Spider-Man, the animated series, was so superior to the X-Men. The X-Men was good, and of course, Spider-Man had a few years to kind of develop and understand what was needed from a cartoon because they learned from the X-Men. But this cartoon series was fantastic. You had all the great villains that he would fight, as you can see in this poster here. Um, just some great and even some sad episodes, and even some particular funny things that happened. Plus, you had the first basically you had the Secret Wars cartoon in this. We remember, I mean, the X Men had the Phoenix Saga, which was fantastic. That cartoon series of the Phoenix Saga. This one had Secret Wars, which was even better, and it also had the first real multiverse because at one point you have all the different Spider-Men from the different universe have to come together. Madam Web brings them together to save the universe from impending doom. That was like a 3 episode story arc, I believe, maybe two. But so that's number two. Before we get to number one, we're going to do some other ones that are out there that people probably had in mind, and they didn't meet my standards at least. One was Gargoyles. I know a lot of people are fans of Gargoyles. I didn't quite get into this. There was a time period in the '90s where, after the success of the Ninja Turtles, you just had different kind of cartoons like this, either mutated creatures or just like the Gargoyles creatures from a different era that they were making so they could sell toys. I didn't watch it, but when I got Disney Plus, this was on there, and I watched the first season. The first season is fantastic, is great. And then the second season, and then even a third season were just straight trash. And I looked it up and realized what it was is that Disney, like the first season, I guess, did not get the ratings that they were expected to get for it. And they didn't want to put as much money into it anymore as they did that first season. So they slashed the budget and they went with a different studio to animate and even write the stories. And you can just tell, like, from the first season to the second, there's like a 60% drop off. And into that third season, there's just really no point to even watch it. So that's the only reason why this didn't make my top 10, because it just had that one great season, and then the rest of it was not good. Um, Again, running with the mutated stuff were the Street Sharks. Again, this was in line with the Ninja Turtles. You had different toy companies that, and same thing they did in the 80's. They wanted to put toys out so they'd have cartoons. I don't know. I think this ran a few seasons. I watched maybe a few episodes of it. I was an older teenager at that time, so I wasn't really watching Saturday morning cartoons anymore. And I think actually we were bowling in bowling league at that time. So Saturday mornings we were at the bowling alley from like 8 till 11. So we missed Saturday morning cartoons, but it was a decent one. The next one, again, we're going to stay with the mutated creatures, was the Cowboys of Moo Mesa. I mean, it might not have been as popular as Street Sharks or the Mighty Ducks cartoon, or a few of the other cartoon creature shows, but this one was a decent one as well. If you get a chance, check that out. Um, Johnny Bravo. This was when Cartoon Network was really pushing um, their style out there. You had Johnny Bravo, Two Stupid Dogs, Dexter's Laboratory. You also had the Powerpuff Girls that were with that. I mean, they were great, but they just didn't make my top 10. Now, Bobby's World came close. I almost wanted to put this one in because Bobby's World was a decent cartoon. Plus, I can talk like Bobby. But it wasn't. It didn't make my top 10. This one was probably number 11 if I had to go anywhere. This one was probably number 11. So my number one, and I mean, I don't see how anybody would hate this being my number one, was Batman the Animated Series. Now, again, when this one came out, and maybe it was just for where I was, I don't know. But it was on every afternoon. It was already in syndication. Um, and it would come on at like 3 o'clock, 3:30 in the afternoon, whatever it was. So it was one of those things like we would race to get home from school so we could watch the episode of the animated series, because this was just a great series. They did the villains well, the whole noir feel into it was fantastic. Even though you felt like it was like on our timeline, but it looked retro, which was fantastic. Plus, you had Mark Hamill as the Joker. You had a lot of great things going with this. And then I just remember it going to mainly on Saturday mornings at one point. Then went over to WB when WB became their own cartoon, or their own channel, because it had been on Fox for a minute there. But yeah, I don't know if that's for everybody else, but for us, it was already syndication in '92, and it was every afternoon. I could be wrong on that, but that's where my memory is on that. So again, going back to the list, I had Animaniacs at 10, Tiny Toons at 9, Ah Real Monsters at 8, Darkwing Duck at 7, Doug the Nickelodeon version at 5, excuse me, at 6. Um, Now I'm getting myself confused. Animaniacs at 10, Tiny Toons at 9, Ah Real Monsters at 8, Darkwing Duck at 7, Doug at 6, Nickelodeon Doug, The Tick at 5, X-Men at 4, Rocco at 3, Spider-Man animated series at 2, and Batman at 1. Now these were all 90s series, again, 90s. So if you're upset about something recently that needs to be in there, or something after that, or something before, that's not what we're doing here. We're just doing the 90s. I can do an 80s and even after that, because I watched a few cartoons after that, but not much. And I didn't go with some cartoons because there were some that started like in like 99. Like Ed, Ed and Eddie was one that started in 99. But that was, to me, it was more of a 2000s, like early 2000s. The same thing some might say with Dexter's Laboratory, or even some of the other Cartoon Network stuff. So I kind of steered away from those, even though those were good. But we'll get to some of those maybe next time. But yeah, so those are my top 10. Let me know what your top 10 were. If you don't agree with it, that's fine too. Let me know. Um, but yeah, let me know what you think. Um, until then, it was fun. You guys have a good whatever you're doing, wherever it is, and find some good earth and dig it. All right. All right. Check you later.